There's something about the way Furiosa looks compared to Mad Max Fury Road that makes it feel less impactful. There was a bit of a controversy about the film's CGI before the movie's release, and I think that was a little misguided. The CGI itself is fine, but the way the film is stylized lessens the impact that the Wasteland had. And whether for that reason or others, Furiosa did not do well at the box office. Only making $30 million on the opening weekend against a reported budget of $160 million, it quickly found its way to a VOD release 30 days after it premiered. So what happened? There were a few things that really worked against this movie. Let's start with the obvious. It's a prequel, which means we kind of already know how the story's going to end up. As an origin story for the character Furiosa, we got an intimate look at her start in the Wasteland, and learned more about her home and her family. We learned how she ended up at the Citadel and saw her fight and survive countless hardships. But we as the audience know that she ends up alive at the end of the film, which lessens the impact of some of the dangerous chase scenes that the Mad Max franchise is known for. For Furiosa to succeed both commercially and artistically, it needed to reintroduce the stakes for this character. We needed a richer storytelling experience than the one we received, as this character kind of went through the exact same thing that Max did in Fury Road. She's catapulted headfirst into the Wasteland and must learn how to survive. But unlike Max in Fury Road, we know she's going to come out alive. I get that in most major movies the main character generally survives. Even when a character is put in a horrible spot, most of the time they end up escaping. When the death is teased, it rarely delivers. But in Furiosa, I felt like the knowledge of her survival really weighed the film down. Coupled with the fact that Dementus seemingly had more screen time than Anya Taylor-Joy as Furiosa, and the movie started to feel aimless for me. We were with Furiosa and witnessed the story through her eyes for most of the movie, but it felt like the stories featuring her younger years dragged, especially when considering Anya was marketed as the main character of the film, and in Fury Road, we were thrown into the action immediately. One thing that Fury Road did really well was bring us into the desperation and the desolation of the Wasteland. The film starts and ends with water. Immortan Joe is in control, and the masses are in dire need of water. Watching the water fall and the platforms rise, we realize quickly that anyone on the ground here is in rough shape. With Furiosa, we see at the beginning that food is scarce, and that her place of abundance is rare. But the ending we got was telegraphed from the beginning, and the character development throughout the film felt static, which made the ending feel kind of dull. With it being a prequel, we of course understand that Furiosa's place of abundance is gone in Fury Road. But just because the movie is a prequel doesn't mean it doesn't deserve a proper ending. The way it ended with her killing Dementus and more musings on the Wasteland felt anticlimactic to me. With Fury Road coming in at 2 hours and Furiosa approaching 2.5 hours, it really felt bloated at times and sort of meandering through an origin story. I think without Fury Road as its sequel, maybe Furiosa as a standalone movie would feel better. But even though it's a prequel, I think George Miller and team needed to find a way to show us something new in this film. The addition of Dementus, who, while fun to watch, didn't fully captivate me. And that brings me back to the CGI. I took a quick look at the production locations for both Fury Road and Furiosa and wasn't surprised to see a key difference. Fury Road shot some of the movie on location in the desert in Namibia, but Furiosa was filmed entirely in Australia, and a lot of the set pieces were filmed at abandoned areas with CGI added in later to achieve the final look. Colin Gibson, production designer for both films, said that the producers were against returning to Namibia for the shoot, instead insisting on staying in Australia. This really hurt the film. We lost out on the authenticity and the desolation of the Namibia desert, and instead relied on parts of the Australian wilderness that were enhanced with CGI. Most of the film had this glossy look to it, and it felt just a little too stylized, further lessening the impact the story and the world had. In order to really feel the stakes of the Wasteland and the dangers tormenting Furiosa, I feel like we needed to feel the sand and the heat and the lack of moisture. But in Furiosa, the CGI elements made it seem almost marvelly, with some scenes being so obviously shot on a blue screen soundstage instead of out in the desert. It's a subtle difference that maybe audiences didn't really notice. But there's a stark contrast between the crisp blue sky of Fury Road and the glossy saturation of Furiosa. I also understand it makes for a harder shoot to shoot on location in a remote desert, but that extra work and the attention to detail that it requires makes a huge difference in the overall impact of the film. In Fury Road, you have a memorable movie that will go down as a classic cinematic experience. But with Furiosa, you have a film that left theaters in 30 days, didn't make much of a dent at the box office, and will be relegated to Max streaming services, barely registering with the culture in 2024. Especially when compared to another big desert movie from 2024, Dune Part 2, it falters. Dune shot in a studio as well, but for the big set pieces, they shot on location in the deserts of Jordan and Abu Dhabi, and it seems that they were able to blend the CGI to the real world in a better way. So what were your thoughts on the film? I know some of you preferred Furiosa over Fury Road. Would love to hear any opinions you have on the CGI or the story structure in the comments. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more film analysis in the future.